Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you all to this November community call of our Chartres Academy as we prepare ourselves for our next journey to that sacred place, July 6th through 12 of 2025. I want to welcome all of you in the spirit of the mother tree, that sycamore tree in the opening video that drew us to Chartres and spoke to our hearts and ignited what is now going on nearly 20 years of pilgrimage to that holy site associated with the divine feminine. Today, we're going to continue our preparation for our next liberal art, the liberal art of geometrica, by looking at some of the sacred geometry, also looking at the living waters of the well in Chartres, which has been, that hill of Chartres has been a source of spring water for several thousand years and continues to attract pilgrims from all over the world to partake of its sacredness. We wanted to start today, however, with some reflections on the US election, because I think all of us are still taking in the reality that we are confronted by 4 more years of Donald Trump. We're confronted with the demise of the Biden-Harris administration and the fact that across the board, Donald Trump demonstrated for the first time in the 3 elections that he has been a part of, that he was able to get a majority of the popular vote. And that happened to a significant degree because of the lack of turnout on the part of the Democrats, given the comportment of principally Joe Biden, but also Kamala Harris with regards to foreign policy and even domestic policy. This was one of the situations where the Democrats were weighed in the balances and found wanting, and the message of Donald Trump resonated with about 5 million more people than who turned out for the Democratic Party. So I wanted to just make several very brief comments because I think many of us, including myself, are in a state of what I would call ontological shock. It took me a few days to kind of come to terms with it. I even felt fluish and just not well in my body and my soul as I began to just internalize that we are in a very challenging situation as Americans, those of you who are US citizens, and I believe that that extends to the rest of the world. The first comment that I want to make is that from an astrological point of view, we are witnessing during this election the Pluto return. And that means that where the planet Pluto was on July 4, 1776, is where Pluto is right now in the US natal chart. Pluto is the god of Hades. He's the god of hell, literally, the god of disruption, the Dionysian energy of delirium and obsession, and the energy that Donald Trump has exerted over the US electorate has been a Plutonian energy at its heart, disruptive, condescending, bullyish, racist, misogynist. Those are the archetypal energies that coalesce in our particular case as the attractive magnetic power of Pluto reaches, as it has now, to an apogee moment. The second point, which is synchronic with the Plutonian energy being exerted on the American psyche, has to do with what the philosopher Plato, 2,500 years ago, said about democracy. He made the point that if you want to go to a doctor, you don't go to just anybody. You go to someone trained in medicine. If you want to get your shoes fixed, you don't go to just anybody. You go to someone who knows how to fix shoes. He says the one and only domain in the political life, certainly of ancient Athens, but also the United States, where there are no criteria anywhere except that you have to be a US citizen and I believe it's 40 years old. Anybody can become president. So what that means, says Plato, is that you have the ship of state, and the pilot is not trained in the stars or in navigation. He gets elected by just simply fooling as many people as he possibly can about his prowess. And occasionally, you'll get someone who is capable of actually leading. But for the most part, Plato said, democracies descend eventually into mob rule in a highly polarized polity. And out of that polarization and anarchy comes the tyrant. I believe that that is what we're going to experience with Donald Trump. And I believe that these archetypal patterns, both Plutonian and in terms of the tyrant, are going to characterize much of the next 4 years. The final point that I want to make is that as we navigate through this, whatever it is that fortifies our souls, whatever it is that strengthens our community, is what we need to tend to. It's not going to be easy. There will be an assault on women's sovereignty. There will be an assault on anyone of gender fluidity, particularly the trans. There will be an assault on civil rights. There will be a weaponization of the Justice Department and the FBI to serve the whims of the president. And remember, this is being done in the immediate aftermath of what the Supreme Court ruled just a few months ago, and that is that the President of the United States is completely immune from prosecution for anything that he does while he's in office at an official capacity. So Trump's going into office without any of the impediments that obstructed his worst instincts before, and on the basis of which he was impeached twice. That impediment will no longer apply. So how we as progressives, which I think characterizes most of the people on this call, how we as people of conscience, how we as people who want to maintain the sanctity of the earth in the face of drill, baby, drill, we need to spend time in discernment, because I think we're in a situation where community is emerging as far more important than individual sovereignty and isolation. Someone said that the choice before America was between Jane Fonda and John Wayne, and the majority chose John Wayne. There's some truth to that. And therefore, making pilgrimage to Chartres next year is more important than it was before. We need, in the face of the toxic masculine that is now in the ascendancy, to embody the sacred feminine, probably more than at any time in our lifetime. Previously, the sacred feminine was something that we could do in an otherwise normal environment, but no longer. The sacred feminine, so powerfully present in Chartres, now needs to be embodied in ways, given the context in which we find ourselves, as never before. Those are just a few comments that I would make. I know that people have many different points of view. Possibly, if we have time later on in this call, we can air a few. I've been doing sessions on Humanity Rising, as many of you know, talking about the election, welcoming comments. This is something that we need to discuss. It's something that we need to deeply contemplate, both in terms of the failure of the Democrats and the reasons why Trump won the election, but most importantly, how we now, both as individuals, but also as community, navigate our way through. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this community call. I want to now turn to our preparations for our pilgrimage next July to Chartres. I've said in various communications that I am particularly excited for this pilgrimage, because we're going to be having Veda Austin, the great water researcher, present with us. And I'm actually, when Kaylin finishes, I'm going to show you a photograph of my meditation with water this morning here in Washington, D.C., because it literally blew my mind. And I've sent it off to Veda to get her comment. And I'll say more about it and I'll show you. But right now, I want to invite Kaylin Rain, who has been with the university longer than anybody, because he was already there when I was appointed president of the university by the board in 2024, and took office in February of 2025. And Kaylin has been a close advisor and friend since that time. He is a master of the invisible realms, as you all know. And he has a few comments that he wants to make about the sacred geometry, because next year we're going to be contemplating the sixth of the seven liberal arts on the sacred geometry of the universe. He's also going to say a few words about the well there at Chartres, and then I'll circle back with a few more words about what is in store for next year. But Kaylin, welcome.
Hello. Okay, we're going to try to share a screen. You'll need to tell me if I did this right. There.
No, you need to make it whole screen.
Yeah. You. I'm trying to get to the, Gayer showed me how to do this and I'm hitting the button and it's not doing it.
Well, that's okay.
You can see the sacred geometry in Mu.
Yeah, we can see
Okay.
it. So, well, just go ahead.
There's not that many slides. I'm just going to run it this way.
Yeah.
First quote from Anthony Lisi is, "I think our universe is pure geometry, basically a beautiful shape twisting around and dancing over space-time." This is what we call the Ghost Cathedral, which is located about 40 miles from Chartres. Peter Mary discovered this on a Google Earth map, this application that he has, and we traveled to that in 2011, and you'll see this energy line crossing point there where there's a number of energy lines coming together. So we visited the site and found out that it was a racetrack with the energy line crossing point in the middle. It was roughly the same shape as the cathedral, and it had a mound where the labyrinth is. And we knew that somebody else had been there before because they put a copper rod right outside the fence. So the theory was that because it was in a racetrack, that kept energy circulating around that. So we set up an altar there and worked on it. And then the following year, we had a pilgrimage to the crop circles in Wiltshire, followed by coming to Chartres. So I worked with a group of the students, and some of you have seen this slide before, but I worked with a group of students on building altars during the crop circle class, with the intention that the Chartres Cathedral would appear as a crop circle the following week. So this first image is the trilogy of solfeggios, a series of 3 pieces for solo piano that explores the use of interpenetrating triangles. The triangles are created by stacking 3 notes in close intervals, such as major third, minor third, or perfect fifth. The resulting harmonies are often dissonant and unstable, but they eventually resolve into a sense of harmony. So when you look at the cathedral with this image, you can see how the cathedral has these interpenetrating triangles. And the theory that I've worked with, I have a paper on the Monk Library website called The Lower Church of the Black Madonna, which I wrote the first year we went to Chartres in 2006, which explained all of the sacred geometry of the cathedral and the energetics of the cathedral. So I would just suggest that if you're interested, we can probably post it on the Chartres. I'll put a link to it on the Chartres Pilgrim chat. But if you go to the Monk Library, under the papers, there's one called the Lower Church of the Black Madonna. The crypt is typically known as the Lower Church. That's the technical name for it is Lower Church because it was actually a church. So as you can see all the geometry here on the cathedral, and the premise that I work with is that at the end of the cathedral, one end of the cathedral is the labyrinth. At the other end of the cathedral is another labyrinth in a different dimension that you enter and walk to the right when you walk in instead of the left. And the one at the lower part is in what we call Newtonian space-time. So that's the one that's actually visible. It's what is known as a Riemannian manifold. That's what it sits in. It's quantified in Fibonacci numbers, which Fibonacci are the numbers of the universe. In this case, it spins at about 144 hertz. The one at the other end of the cathedral is in a Lorentzian manifold. It's in a separate dimension, and it spins at 322 hertz, which is a Lucas number, which is a variation of Fibonacci numbers. There's a third set of numbers that are called Rain numbers, because I was the one that discovered that if you do alternating Fibonacci and Lucas numbers, you end up with a very interesting set of numbers. One of them is 466 hertz, which is the vibration of consciousness. I gave a paper on that at the Science and Consciousness Conference that begins a week from Monday in Wiltshire. But a couple of years ago, I did a paper on the vibration of consciousness at 466 hertz. So when you walk these 2 labyrinths, when you walk the one at the lower part of the church, you're actually walking the other one simultaneously in an alternate dimension. And when you put the 322 and the 144 together, you're at 466 hertz. And that's the frequency on the square table in the middle of the church. It's interesting, we just got something from the cathedral that said at this point, when you walk the labyrinth, you can walk the labyrinth in, but when you complete it and in the center, you're supposed to walk out the top of the labyrinth. But that's what the nuns did when I did my training in master level labyrinth. We learned that the nuns used to walk the labyrinth, and they walked straight up the center of the cathedral to the square table. In sacred geometry, the most famous thing is squaring the circle. So in my mind, when you walk the labyrinth and you get to the center and you walk straight out the top and go to the square table, in the geometry of all of that, you're actually squaring the circle. So that would be the ultimate in sacred geometry. So the other numbers that come up when you use the rain numbers, one of them is 110 hertz. And as some people know, we've moved all of the PAIR project at Princeton to Broughton Sanctuary in the UK. So we have all of the equipment that the PAIR project did. And one of their discoveries was that all sacred sites vibrate at 110 hertz or 111 hertz, somewhere around there. So what's interesting about the cathedral is the labyrinth has 111 lunations around it. It has 11 circuits. Scientists have discovered that in order for string theory and multiverse theory to work, there needs to be 11 dimensions and not 10. The medieval multiverse and the Aristotelian multiverse all had 11 circuits. And recent discoveries have said that the brain can process information in 11 dimensions. So the 11 is really important. So the other third number that comes up with my numbers is 555. And the 555 is 5 times 111, which is 555 hertz, which opens a fifth dimensional portal. So what happened was the following year in 2012, I used a number of my purbas. I have all these purbas from the Himalayas. I've got 85 of them. And they're used to open portals and to also pin things down. So this is me near Silbury Hill in Glastonbury, setting up this series of purbas. And here they are all strung out. The second one up near the top, the little taller one, is a female purba that we call the Black Madonna purba. I had placed her in the Ghost Cathedral. I had also placed her in the, I'd carried her in the center of the Chartres labyrinth, beneath my clothing, obviously, so they didn't see it. And then the next one was, this was the altar that was set up in Avebury, Glastonbury, and Stonehenge with the Black Madonna in the center. And it was aimed towards Chartres. And the theory was that we could have the Chartres Cathedral form as a crop circle. We left on Saturday and arrived at Chartres on Sunday morning. And this is what it appeared back in Wiltshire on Saturday night. This was the Chartres Cathedral as a crop circle. And as you can see beneath it, there are 5 what look like teardrops or raindrops. And I believe this to be an image of the 5 wells that are beneath the Chartres Cathedral, each one with this 111 hertz resonance, which gives you the 555 hertz. So when you're in the lower church with the Black Madonna who's in the mound, you're in this energetic field of 5 wells, each spinning with the 111 hertz and 555 hertz. So I always tell people when you're in the well, if possible, you can lean against the wall because you can feel the water beneath the cathedral and beneath the labyrinth. And 2 weeks later, it put a second piece on top of it, which I believe to be the Black Madonna. And then another couple of weeks later, it dropped this little part on the bottom, which looks like the lower part of a purba. And that's the end. Stop share. Okay, I'm off of the screen sharing. Jim?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So now we'll get to the water part. So down in if you're down in the lower church, you're down here, you're near those 5 wells. Let's back over here. So now I'm going to get to Mu, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jim to see what he thinks about this. Various people have thought that there are mythological lost continents, which have shown up in various readings over the centuries. Some people say there's an Atlantis. Some people say there's one called Lemuria, but there was one called Mu, M-U, which was believed to be, some people said in the Atlantic Ocean, some people said it was in the Pacific Ocean near the Easter Islands and stretched from the Easter Islands to Hawaii. But it was named M-U, Mu. Mu in Chinese iconography means wood. So now we're dealing with trees and wood. Mu in the Tao Te Ching is the original non-being from which being is produced in the Tao Te Ching, Mu. In the Kan school of Buddhism, you're probably familiar with, does a dog have Buddha nature? And the answer is Mu. It meant pure awareness prior to experience or knowledge. It's used especially by the Kan school of Buddhism. For those of you who study Tibetan Buddhism, this would be similar to Rigpa, which is non-conceptual, thought-free, original wakefulness. So then we get to the Greeks, and the 12th letter of the Greek alphabet is Mu, and it corresponds to the following information. Double amount of solar radiation leads to such condensation of matter so that we can see things and creatures. Indeed, according to the Greek alphabet code, Mu is the visible nature. So where did that symbol come from in the Greek alphabet? It was derived from the Egyptian hieroglyphic symbol for water, which had been simplified by the Phoenicians and named after their word for water. So I believe that there's the tying in of the water and the wells and the cathedral and the sacred geometry and the labyrinths, all of that ties together and allows us to end up with a way to look into ourselves. When we walk the labyrinth, we're actually connecting to the wells, we're connecting to the water, and it allows us to become more aware of ourselves. And with that, I would turn it back to Jim.
Thank you, Kalen. As always, I am intrigued by what you're saying about Mu, because that is quite an extraordinary synchronicity between the Greeks and the Chinese and the Tao Te Ching and the sacred geometry and the waters and the wood. When did you derive that particular insight? What's the basis of that insight? Just your own study, or did you come across it in Robert Fowler, or where?
It's just, I've been a student of Buddhism now for it's almost 60 years, and Mu was the first, because I started out with Zen Buddhism, it was the first symbol I came across. And then I day traded the stock market, and for a while I was day trading Micron Technology, whose symbol is Mu. And then I just kept coming across the term Mu. And then it was the lost civilization. It was part of the Tao Te Ching. It was the symbol for wood. It was the 12th letter of the Greek alphabet for water. And just over the years, because I worked so much with the labyrinths and the geometry and
Right.
and all of that, it was just a matter of, it was fairly easy to, cut everybody knows how my brain works. When I get onto something, I try to go like 12 levels deep on it. So it only had to go a few levels deep to get to the Mu and the water. The last piece I didn't have was the fact that the Greek alphabet symbol, it looks like two trees, almost like two pine trees, but it was derived from the Egyptian hieroglyphic symbol for water. So that was sort of the last piece that came in. And then before that, the Phoenicians. So that sort of was the last piece of that little puzzle to tie in the lower church to the upper church.
Right. Gotcha. Well, listen, I'm going to show something that is as close to, it was my experience of Mu this morning in Washington. And I'm going to screen share here. Can people see that?
Yes.
That is a statue of the Greek goddess Artemis, which is found in various places of Anatolia and the Far East. She was the Greek goddess of the hunt. She was the Greek goddess of virgins and birth. She was associated with Mithra and Inanna and Ishtar. She was, if you look back to her originating mythology, was the feminine face of the masculine Mithra. And the Mithraic mysteries are some of the most ancient mysteries known, going back to, really almost the dawn of civilization and consciousness. Every day, I've taken as part of my spiritual practice to take a petri dish and sometimes and cover the bottom with water and then hold it and either hold it close to my heart or sometimes I'll put it by some flowers, or I'll just create an intent, or sometimes over word. Today, I had something that I've never experienced before, and I've never seen in any of Veda Austin's work. And so I've sent this to her, and I want everybody to look at it. I don't know how I build it up, but normally, if you know Veda Austin's work, the image appears horizontally in the water, and you'll get an image of the Buddha, or you'll get an image of the flower. Today, I put the petri dish right in front of Artemis and kind of held my gaze and my intention on Artemis. And then I put the petri dish in the freezer. And what came out was not an image, but a statue, three-dimensional statue out of the water. I want everybody to take that in. What happened today, and I just did it, so I know this to be incontrovertibly true. The water created the statue in 3D, rising out of the petri dish. And to say that blew my mind is an understatement. But I want to just dwell on this for a moment, because I think I'm beginning to experience certain things with water that makes me more excited for next year in Geometrica than I can remember being excited about going to Chartres in some time. Think about what I just showed you. I took a petri dish. I covered the bottom with water. I put the petri dish in front of the image of Artemis. I held intent for about 30, 40 seconds. And I walked away and started to do my morning practice. And then about 5, 10 minutes later, I came and put the petri dish, and it created a statue of Artemis in 3D. You know, when you hear things like Kaylin just talked to us about, creating an altar in England, traveling to France, holding the intention of a crop circle in Chartres, and in Wiltshire, out of nowhere, the same day comes a crop circle. And what it is manifesting for our contemplation and edification is the reality of the intricate relationship between human intent and physical manifestation. We had someone on Humanity Rising on Friday, just 2 days ago, Daniel Burge, who's a homeopathist. And what he was telling us about the advances in homeopathy, again, kind of blew our collective mind. I've been taking homeopathy all my adult life. You take these little pellets, and it's either diluted, 15 or 30 or 200, and it works in this inverse relationship that the more diluted it is, the more powerful it is. What they begin to discover is if you take something like a flour and a mortar and pestle, and you grind and you grind and you grind and you grind in a kind of a sometimes a sugar milk solution or some other kind of solution, neutral solution that you can find at a homeopathic apothecary, and you do it for 15 minutes, then rest, then another 15 minutes and rest, and another 15 minutes, and you can do it over days. Dilute, 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 dilute. And what they're discovering is that the more diluted it is, you go through, it's like an onion, from the center of the onion to the outside of the onion, that you, like we experienced in Teotihuacan, those of you who were at our last pilgrimage at Teotihuacan. Remember when you start at the pyramid of Quetzalcoatl and you go up the valley of death, you pass to your right the pyramid of the sun, but you end up at the pyramid of the moon. You go through the process of letting go of the physicality. And then you let go of the emotions. Then you let go of the mental. Then you let go of your life memories. And you let go and you let go and you let go until you're enveloped into the cosmic wholeness of everything that is. That's what they're discovering about the dilution of homeopathy. That you go from your physical to the collective to the planetary, dilute, dilute, and dilute, to the solar system, to the galaxy, to super galaxies, and finally to the cosmic oneness, the mu, if you will. That which is beyond the beyond, but brings the beyond and the invisible realm into the manifest world. It's water, it's wood, it's number, it's all that is. And the mystery that appeared for me this morning in a way that was shocking is that when you imbue your intent with a sacred reverence for the water itself, water can even create, in a few minutes, a statue of the goddess. And it was Veda Austin who discovered all this. Anyone who's been tracking, advanced research knows about Emoto in Japan about 20 years ago. The Japanese scientists who discovered that if you have 3 vials of water and you ignore one, you love and you give gratitude to the second, and you really send bad vibes to the third, that over several days, that will have an effect on the water. The water that's just ignored will get kind of insipid and murky and smelly. And the water that is loved and receives gratitude stays clear. And the water that is filled with negative energy becomes dark and malignant and nasty. Well, what Veda Austin discovered, who was this young woman in New Zealand, didn't know anything about anything, got into an accident in a car accident, hit by a truck, multiple fractures and injuries to her abdominal region and splinters of glass in her body and multiple operations. I think she had something like 8 operations, was told she was never going to be able to be a mother, and she was never going to be able to lead a normal life. And someone told her about a man that had land by a spring, and the spring water was particularly alkaline. And the alkaline water was healing people. So she went over there and got some and started to drink it. The next thing, make a long story very, very short, she was healed. She's had 3 children. And she's dedicated her life to the study of water. And she started where Emoto left off. And you can see her videos. You can read her book. She just came out with a book on the living intelligence of water. She's discovered that water not only will hold your image, but it reads language. If you put the word love in any language under a petri dish of water, sometimes it'll form a heart, sometimes a circle, but it'll be something that is harmonizing. It won't always do it. You have to build up a relationship with water. I've been doing the water for on and off because I traveled, for about a year, but I'm realizing that my resonance now with water is deepening. And for example, this is a glass of water. If you take the glass of water after you put the water in the glass and just hold it, maybe up to your heart or in your hands, and you let the water experience your heartbeat, your body pulse, and you beam love and energy, it won't change the chemistry of the water. It changes the structure of the water till it becomes crystalline, like snowflakes. And that water is even capable of language, so that Veda has coined the term hydroglyphs for how water can communicate in abstract thought. We humans think we're the only ones that are capable of abstract thought. Take in that so's water, among probably every other conscious being in the universe, any other sentient being. We always manifest our consciousness through the structures, the sacred geometry, as Kaylin was telling us. So that whatever the configuration of your form, the sacred geometry of your body and your heart and your soul and your consciousness, that's what shapes how consciousness is manifest. But it's all the same consciousness. Every sentient being is capable of abstract thought, communication, empathy, fear. All sentient being communicates. The only question is whether you can understand what it or they are saying. So when we come to Geometrica next year, we're going to do some work with water that will be extraordinary. And Veda Austin, for 7 days, is going to grace us with her intelligence and what she's learned about the living sacred geometry of water. And what we're in the process, not through Veda, but through other research, like with Nassim Haramein, the great physicist, is we used to think that the brain was the control center of the human reality. And then sort of we discovered, well, the heart's got all these neurons, and the gut has more neurons than the brain. Now we're beginning to discover that the organizing principle of the body is not them, not your brain, not your heart, not your gut. It's your water. Every cell in your body has water. And my water is communicating with your water right now. And when one thinks of the living waters, when one thinks of the omnipresence of water, and that water is the essential ingredient for life, and one takes in that we are now at that apogee moment of human technology, where because of the misuse of technology, we've brought through technology our imminent self-destruction, the upsurge of truths about the true nature of the cosmos and nature is, in my view, our pathway to the redemption that we seek. So it's my sincere hope that all of us who can make it to Chartres next year do so. We're working on getting Veda on Humanity Rising over the next month or two. She's become a friend. I adore Veda. She's just alive with water. And I can hardly wait for her to be present with us. So that's what we're preparing for, everyone. And I'm working on getting her maybe next month, or maybe as a Christmas treat on our community call. She's in New Zealand, so we have to work out the time zones and all of that. But we're seeing what we can do. So I'll bring it to a close there. This is just a teaser for what we're having in mind. I would also add that we're working with Veda to have people be able to take all her courses and then come into Ubiquity University and get a master's and PhD in water studies. Just imagine doing a PhD dissertation on hydroglyphs. You talk about an original contribution to human thought. It's going to be amazing, just amazing. So I'm going to put the link in the chat box of our course coming up. We urge everybody to register. It's going to be very, very exciting. We're hopeful that the world holds until then, but in community, we're going to make it whatever happens. We all need to be holding hands and honoring the living intelligence and compassionate being that is in every cell of our bodies, and that's water. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Kaylin, why don't you come back on? And I want Kaylin to close us out, maybe with the bowl or with a blessing, Kaylin, because you sit closer to God than I do, for sure.
Oh, just everybody remember that most of your body and your essence is water, and one theory is that the extraterrestrials are using people to move water around the planet as they plot something. So that'll tie into your ET thing. That water is just a way it moves itself, or the only reason people exist are just to move water around the planet. So this is the magic singing bowl that produces all the altars, that produces all the strange things. From the Himalayas, it's got 13 metals and 3 kinds of meteorite. So we'll hit a few of these.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kaylin. I want to just honor the water within us. I want to honor the waters all over the world. I want to honor the sacred feminine, the waters of the sacred feminine, the womb that carries us all. I want to bless all of us in this moment and hold this moment with sacredness, with blessing, and in community. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next month. Bye.